Welcome to another edition of Hucks on Pucks. I'm your host Kyle Huckins, and today we're talking the Southeast Division. Yeah, hey, you gotta talk about them all. As usual, this division's probably going to be the worst in the NHL. Although I don't think it's going to be as bad as it has been previous seasons. That said, bringing up the rear, I got the Winnipeg Jets. They weren't a great team last year. They're a very young team. They're pretty exciting. If Andrew Kane could play for my team any day of the week. But they don't have a whole lot. In goal, you got Andrei Pavlich, who's looked good. His numbers aren't the best. He's not playing behind a great defense, though. So I think they're better off in goal than their goals against average would indicate. Behind him, probably going to have Al Montoya. Could be worse. Could be better, but it could be worse. Also, I'm pretty sure Pavlich is probably going to play the bulk of the games anyway, especially in a truncated season like this one. So, in goal, I think Winnipeg's going to be okay. Defense. Kind of depends on Zach Bogosian's health because he had wrist surgery. If he's good to go, defense might actually be in decent shape. If he's not good to go, then they're really going to be... because even with Bogosian, that's a pretty thin crop back there. I mean, you've got... Enstrom's very good. Dustin Byfuglien, he's a great offensive defenseman. His own end is still kind of a problem. That said, I think he will get better, and he's still a giant with a huge shot who can get stuff done down low when he ventures down there. But like I said, beyond those three, it's not a complete horror show, but it very, very thin. Up front's also pretty thin, to be honest. Left wing is the real strength of this team with Andrew Ladd and Evander Kane. Now, Ladd's been great since he got here from Chicago. Evander Kane, he had some injury issues early, but last year I think he had 27 goals. He just signed him to a pretty big extension, leading to that picture you may remember from the Twitter. May not. But left wing's team's very solid. At center, they're okay. I mean, just signed Olli Jokinen, who's got some offensive talent. He's not a great player by any stretch, but he's a serviceable offensive player. Brian Little's been very good since they were in Atlanta. And Nick Antropov, he's inconsistent, but he's a giant. And he's got some offensive touch. Honestly, I was kind of mad when the Rangers let him go a few years ago. Right side, do you have Blake Wheeler? Blake Wheeler's a good player. Alex Burmistrov's shown flashes, but beyond that, it's pretty thin. You've got Kyle Wellwood, who's most famous for being the butt of many a joke on Down Goes Brown after him. Infamous picture of him got out, and let's just say he looked less than athletic if you've not seen it. But yeah, I mean, they're largely returning the same team. And that team wasn't that great last year. I don't think they're going to be a threat to do anything. Oh. Number 4. Got the Florida Panthers. Let's not kid ourselves. This team did it with smoke, mirrors, and overtime losses last year. They're not that good. They're not a good team. And I'm definitely looking to them coming back down to earth this year. Didn't really add much of note in the offseason. They lost Jason Garrison, who provided a lot of unexpected offense from the blue line last year. Now, he may not have done it again. Like I said, that could have been a total fluke. But Brian Campbell did give them some firepower from the blue line, which is good because this team really struggles to score goals. And I look for that to continue. You know, they added Philip Kuba, who's been pretty much passed around like a bad rumor at this point. You know, he's one of those guys, it seems like he always has a job, but nobody wants him. I can't really explain that. Mike Weaver's been very solid for them on defense. He's not an offensive guy, he's a defensive guy. Brian Campbell had a great bounce-back season last year. If he can keep it going, there's reason to know hope on that blue line. Also got the young Dmitry Kulikov. He's very inconsistent. But, you know, you're going to live with that with a young defenseman. I'm not crazy about that defense, though. Goaltending. Yeesh. Oh, there's a reason this team lost 40 games in the shootout last year. Oh, it's a miracle they got there at all. Got Scott Clemenson and Jose Theodore. Theodore can be good. Over the past few years, he's had those flashes of, oh, that's why he's a former Vezina winner. Followed immediately by those flashes of, why is he in the NHL? You know, I really don't feel this team in goal. Behind him, you got former Devil Scott Clemenson. One of those guys who he's always been on team, except when he's with the Devils. It seems like teams expect him to be the starter, but he's not good. He's not good enough to be the starter. But he's good enough to be the backup who looks like he can be a starter. But yeah, I am not crazy about their goaltending at all. Now, like I said, they had a terrible offense. They were okay on defense. But they got something like 18 loser points last year. This team won a division and won less than half of its games. I don't see that continuing. Up front, they've got some decent forwards. Nothing great. Now, they tried to add some toughness in the offseason in George Parros and Andre DeVoe. I don't really know that toughness is what this team needed. It needed scoring. Now, I know their top prospect, Jonathan Huberdeau, is supposed to make the team. He's supposed to be a very good offensive player. That may be the case, but they finished 27th in goals last year. I don't think that's going to be enough. They're going to need a few guys to have breakout seasons, or they're going to have to make a move just to make the playoffs. I mean, left wing, Huberdeau's good. Thomas Fleischmann, he's had health. He is a good player. He's had health issues, though, so you never know when he's going to be able to play. Sean Bergenheim, he had that great playoff with Tampa a few years ago, so they signed him to a big deal. And he's turned back into Sean Bergenheim. You know, decent player with a bit of touch who got hot during the playoffs. And they couldn't wait to get him over there. Yeah, not a great signing. Center, you got Stephen Weiss. He looks like a good player. Now, he's easily their top center. Beyond that, it's not a whole lot going on. You know, Peter Mueller, it's one of those guys whose name could legally be changed to if healthy. He's shown talent, but he's also had concussion issues. That's big red flag. Former Shark Marcel Gotch. He's a body. At right wing, you've got Chris Versteeg, he had a terrible season with Toronto and Philly. Came to Florida, and he's played well. He is a solid player. Unfortunately, he's also their best right wing. Yeah, I'm not crazy about that situation. I like him as a player, but when he's your top right wing, you've got issues. Scotty Upshall is behind him. He's another one of those guys where just the feeling is that there's more coming, but he's 29. There isn't. Oh yeah, like I said, they've got some decent parts, but they don't really have a great team. I mean, Kevin Dineen's a damn good coach. I mean, he managed to win the division with this team somehow. I don't think that's going to happen again, especially given what's gone on with the three teams in front of them. Coming in third, I've got the Carolina Hurricanes. Well, as this team, they've improved in the offseason. Obviously, the big move was getting Jared Stahl from the Penguins to play with brother Eric. I mean, look, he's a great player. He was a third-line center last year, but he was on the same team with Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. There's no shame in being behind those two. So, he was definitely the best third-line center in the NHL last year. He's going to be moving up, accepting a larger role. In fact, it looks like him and he's going to join brother Eric on the top line with another new recruit, former Cap Alexander Semin. A deal that could, it's a lot of money, but it's only 1 year. Because he's not been good the past few years. Which is strange because he's been in contract years. Normally that's when guys really go off, and he's kind of shrinked away from that. Hell, last season, he had a typical bad play. He didn't even score that much against the Rangers. And that's the one team in the playoffs he is torched. So, I don't know how excited I would get over Semin. Maybe a new start was what he needed, but he could be... I don't know about this guy. Beyond that, it's pretty thin up front. Although you do have Jeff Skinner. Depending on how he returns from his concussion, he did have that great rookie season. Last year, he had concussion issues. He wasn't nearly as good. If he can come back from those, he'll definitely provide a lot of offense. Because it's pretty thin behind that top line. You see Jokinen, a decent, fantastic in shootouts, but he's a solid player who did have that one great season when he got snapped up by Carolina. Yeah, Tuomo Ruutu on the other side. The one that isn't Yarko. He's a decent NHL player. Not really someone you're crazy about on your second line, but you can deal with him. And your bottom two lines, honestly, there's nothing all that great on there. So I think they'll be able to score, but they're still kind of thin up front. Then we go to the blue line. Yeah, oh boy. Now, Joni Pitkanen is your top guy. Joni Pitkanen's a coin flip. He can be very good. He can be terrible. He's one of those guys, just, you don't really want to sign him to a big deal because he's a defenseman you probably want to keep on 1 or 2 year deals because he can turn like that. It's just very inconsistent. Brought back Joe Corvo for the 15th time. He's a third pair guy who's got some offense. Nothing all that great. Tim Gleason's going to be your defensive rock out there. Doesn't contribute a ton of offense, but incredibly solid in his own end. Kind of guy you'd probably like to pair Pitkanen with because, like I said, Pitkanen can be a disaster in his own end at times. But the defense is pretty thin. I don't think they're going to be doing their goalies a whole lot of favors. Your goaltending combo is going to be Cam Ward and Justin Peters. Now, I really don't know anything about Justin Peters, but Cam Ward's going to be the starter. He's going to get the bulk of the games. I've always felt he's probably the most overrated goalie in the NHL. Seriously, when you look at his numbers at the end of the year, they're usually not that great. I mean, he's not like Steve Mason bad by any stretch, but I don't expect a whole lot out of him. And the way most NHL announcers talk him up, it's he's okay. He may be the best goalie in that division, but that's not saying a lot. So yeah, I think Carolina's going to finish third. Probably compete for that 8th seed. Probably fall out of it like the last day of the season because, well, that's what they do. Coming in number 2, the Washington Capitals. Obviously, this team starts and ends with Ovechkin, who's been in a bit of a slide. However, I think he's going to be better this year. Because they brought in new coach, Adam Oates. And Ovechkin's had a lot of chemistry with Nick Backstrom, who's a very good playmaker. A very good playmaker who's going to be coached by Adam Oates. Yeah, I think Nick Backstrom is going to have a very good year if he can stay healthy. I don't even think Ovechkin's going to have to be great. I just think if Oates can impart his wisdom to Backstrom, all Ovechkin has to do is get to the spots. Backstrom's going to hit him with the puck. You're good to go. Also going to have a new second-line center in former star and Canadian Mike Ribeiro. I like this pickup a lot. It gives them a little more offensive depth, so he can team with Brooks Lake. And playing with Ribeiro, Lake should have a fairly decent season. Got a pretty good third line in Jay Beagle, Joel Ward, Jason Chimera. They're hoping Joel Ward can recapture some of that playoff form he had in Nashville before he signed with the Capitals and had a very disappointing 6-goal season. I'm thinking he probably will, to be honest. Especially because they're going to have... he's not going to be facing the top checkers. And he's going to be out to prove himself. So I wouldn't be surprised if you get a decent number of goals from that third line. And fourth line, well, I'm sure Matt Hendricks will be there. The guy who gave the Rangers fits in the playoffs last year. He's a big, tough hombre, and he's got some hands. No, he can definitely play a bit. He's got some game. Oh, I think they're going to be all right up front. I don't know if Ovechkin will ever be what he once was, but offensively, I think they'll be able to score. And defense, okay, your top pair is John Carlson and Carl Alsner. They were great last year. John Carlson has taken this defense from Mike Green. And why wouldn't he? Carlson's a great defenseman. He's shown he's very adept at every facet of the game. And beyond those two, though, it's a little shaky. Because you got Mike Green, who just got a big deal. Even though he's not been good. He's had a lot of injury problems. And he hasn't really contributed a lot of offense. And if Mike Green isn't scoring, he's not helping because he's not good in his own end. He's not good at all. He'll probably be teamed with Roman Hammerlick, who's 90. He's a smart veteran. He knows what to do, but he's just... I don't know how much tread is left on the tire with Hammerlick. So yeah, I like the top pair for the Caps, but that defense as a whole, goal, got Michael Neuwirth as the backup, and Braden Holtby, last year's playoff revelation, as your starter. We're going to find out who the real Holtby is this season. I mean, he's put together a great resume in the AHL. He looked great in the playoffs last year. He looks like the real deal. And the fact they traded Tomas Vokoun to the Penguins tells you they feel this is their guy. We're going to find out, but in goal, I think they're all right. Not going to be perfect by any stretch, but I do feel like this is going to be a very good team. They should get into the playoffs fairly easily, but I don't think they're going to win the division. Because I really like what Tampa has done. Steve Yzerman, he's been fearless as GM of the Lightning. He's very aggressive. He has not been afraid to make any move he feels he has to make. Last year, obviously their big problem was they couldn't keep the puck out of the net. And Matthew Garon, who's a career backup, who just ends up starting because he's always on really bad teams. In front of him, he acquired Anders Lindback from Nashville Predators. And Lindback doesn't have to be I don't think he has to be great for this team to be good. Now, honestly, if he is average or maybe even a little above average, this team is probably going to cruise. Dwayne Rollison was terrible last year. He was 43 and he played like it. So, just making this massive improvement in goal is really going to help them. They also made a couple of moves on defense to help themselves. They got Matt Carl, former Flyer Matt Carl. Matt Carl was easily the best defenseman on the Flyers last year. And really one of the few who was familiar with the concept. They also picked up Sammy Salo from the Canucks. A dependable veteran when he can play. The guy's been a mash unit his whole career. But you figure Eric Brewer should be decent once again. And especially now that he's not expected to really be the guy. He's kind of settled into a second pair role where he should be fine. Victor Hedman's entering his third or fourth season. I believe third. He's still at that stage. He's getting better. He's going to keep getting better. So I think that defense that was an albatross for them last year is actually going to be pretty good. Not great, but I think they're going to be a solid unit. Now, obviously, the real reason you'll love this team, those forwards. First of all, that top line of Stamkos and St. Louis, goalies just drop a deuce in their pads. St. Louis can do it all. He's more of a playmaker, but he can definitely finish, no problem. Stamkos, the guy could knock a fly off the crossbar with the puck. He's such a great shooter. And they've been playing together for a couple years. They know what the other's going to do. They had Teddy Purcell on the right wing. Maybe not the ideal first liner, but he's shown to be a pretty good player in Tampa. And he's had chemistry with these two. Well, you're not going to mess up that chemistry, even if you would like to improve that position a little bit. Second line, Ryan Malone's been inconsistent since arriving from Pittsburgh. But he is a big, tough guy who can get to the net, and he's got some hands. Center, not sure when they're gonna use an amnesty buyout on him, but Vinny Lecavalier has been a bit of a letdown. He has good time. He's very inconsistent. And it drives coaches mad because we know he's huge and he's got skill to burn, but it just hasn't come together the past few years. He's one. Maybe he just needs a new city. He's one of those guys. It always seems like he could be doing more. Maybe he is maximizing his talent. Expectations are too high. But still, Those are two pretty decent top lines. Third line last year, they actually got a pretty decent season out of Benoit Pouliot. He scored a lot more than would be expected. I wouldn't be surprised if that continues. Beyond that, you're not going to get a ton of offense out of your lower lines. But they're a very physical group. With Adam Hall and B.J. Crombeen. Combine that with Guy Boucher's style of coaching, they're not going to be a fun team to play against. Like I said, I don't think they took any hits from their offense was their strength. I think that's going to be about the same. But they really shored up their deficiencies in goal and on the blue line. That's why I think they're going to win your Southeast Division this year. Alright, it's Kyle Huckins for Hucks on Pucks, and we're going off for 2.